This podcast is intended for mature audiences and contains adult language and subject matter. Listeners, please be advised.
And welcome back, everybody, to another fantastic edition of Drinking with Your Ex. I am Blake Thompson.
And I am Bonnie Neal. And this is a podcast that Blake and I have created because we are exes. We dated back in the day, around the turn of the century, which is still just fun to say. And we both found ourselves friends. And
25 years ago.
God, was it really that long ago? Yeah, I guess it was. Wow. Damn, you're old. Oh my God, you're so old. Oh, yeah. I mean,
Poop my pants.
I mean, that's embarrassing. Get truthful.
I am seasoned. Thank you very much.
Seasoned, sure. We'll go with that. But yes, so we find ourselves both single and over 40 with really strong opinions of why both of us are still single and over 40. And also weirdly having people ask us for a lot of dating advice because we're obviously so successful at it being single and over 40.
Because both of us are single and over 40 with super strong opinions of why we're both single.
And why most people are as well. Blake is a trained therapist. He's got several different letters after his name, basically making him well-versed in the manipulation of human minds and emotions. Myself, I'm just... I would say I'm a lifelong learner of manipulation. I don't know. Really, I just got a lot of opinions.
Yes, she has a lot of opinions, and she's also a trained entrepreneur and salesperson. So
True.
Bonnie has the gift of gab.
No. It's all right. I feel like there's some penicillin for that. Anyway, so that's welcome to our podcast. This is our second season, and we're having a lot of fun. This podcast has 3 rules. The first rule is...
Each episode is inspired by a liquor and or cocktail of our choice.
that, pretty much encompasses our opinions, our overall thematic of the theme. And the second rule is that we both get to introduce the other one, thus engaging in the timeless edge play of having your ex introduce you to the world.
Bonnie's favorite part.
And then the third rule is...
For each topic, we get to ask the other an uncomfortable question.
And they must answer.
They have to answer.
Must answer.
No take-backs. There's no backups. There's no mulligans. You have to answer.
No, and it's fun to just sort of put them on the spot. Because that is the fun thing about having your ex is you really don't give a shit about their more sensitive feelings. You're like, no, answer, motherfucker. I know.
So, on that note, we have a fantastic topic today because we're going to talk about the taboo subject that's on everybody's minds that no one likes to talk about. Pornography.
Pornography. How does pornography fit into one's sex life, one's relationships, one's life in general?
And one's fresh dating life, especially if you find yourself single and you're dating and you have an active pornographic lifestyle.
An active pornographic lifestyle. All right. So with that as the topic this week, this week's episode of Pornography is brought to you by
Boone's Farm, Strawberry Hill.
It'll get you there, but is that really the way you want to go?
Yes, and this is a shout out to all the boomers that used to find themselves jacking off in a bush when they found the Playboy behind the house.
It's retro. Sorry. There's obviously a theme to this one. We're going to be judgy McJudgy bitches.
Judgy McJudgy, and we may have been partaking in one of Bonnie's fabulous whiskeys.
I was actually just congratulating myself on having really excellent taste on whiskey. We will eventually have video to our podcast, things to look forward to. And as you will see is that we record in front of my wonderful wall of booze that has all various different kinds of really excellent liquor. I must say my collection is quite impressive.
Yes, and it goes from speed rack to ultra top shelf.
It's true, it does, with a weird obsession with Madeira and port and sherry.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of sherry influences in her scotches and whiskeys.
It's true. I do like the sherry casks kind of things. Anyway, well, to move on to the second one, introducing each other. Blake, you can go first.
Yes. Let me introduce my ex, Bonnie Neal, who is desperately trying to find an intro that proves that she's the nicer one of the two of us.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce my ex-boyfriend, Blake Thompson, who is an excellent coffee connoisseur. I must say, he gives a lot of thought and attention to the perfect blend of hand-ground coffee beans. And, for his morning ritual for you, he has never made a bad cup of coffee a day in his life. Ladies, gentlemen, he's still single, still a catch. You're ready for him.
And usually that excellent cup of coffee goes with an excellent breakfast.
It's true. But look at you. You're still smiling. I'm the nicer one.
That was very nice. Thank you so much for being gentle with me today.
You're welcome. I'm a giver. Just a giver. Thanks for noticing. All right, well, let's just...
So speaking of giving, let's jump right into the topic.
Just jump right into this topic. All right, so Blake suggested this topic, and I was like, I hate that I think I'm probably going to come off sounding like a weird conservative prude about it, but I would say my main approach to pornography for myself and for others in this post-apocalyptic landscape known as post-40 dating is that I actually think too much of it is pretty harmful. I think one should, maybe engage with pornography the way one should maybe engage with hard drugs, maybe not at all or very sparingly, right? That, I've had friends, very good friends, male friends, cishet male friends who have, developed in their lifetime a pretty hardcore pornography addiction that has led to really scary consequences. One of them lost his job and the other one lost his wife and child because he could not stop watching pornography and essentially like jacking off all the time and all day. And I was like, coming back from that kind of addiction, I don't know if one of them actually really has. I think it just sort of kind of descended into, I think he's still there in a pretty bad depression, obsession, addiction space. And I'm just sort of like, that's, I think pornography seems a lot, a lot of fun. And then,
it seems a lot of fun until it's not.
Until you lose your family, right? Until you lose your job, until you can't stop.
I mean, there's also extremes to that, where someone is using pornography as a filler, much like drug use, where if something is wrong within them, they're dealing with some type of trauma, some type of depression, anxiety, what have you, and anything that feels good, what's free? Pornography on the internet is absolutely stone cold free.
It's true. That is one thing the internet has brought us is we no longer have to pay for pornography. It's free out there. Yay. God bless America. You're welcome.
Unless you want to get into your niche markets and also your niche stars and following OnlyFans and things of that nature.
Well, yeah, there's the free stuff's the gateway drug to paying for it, right? Mm-hmm. But once you get into more niche, but it is free and, yes, right. It's a reliable dopamine hit.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, it goes back to our first episode, right? I do think that pornography, especially the proliferation of it and how like the ease of it's everywhere, has led to the phenomenon that, we call the combo lock.
Yes. Where you overcomplicate your sexual desires by the type of pornography you're watching and consuming.
And therefore, the only way to achieve climax is if you or your partner has to perform a very complicated series of fantasies, positions, lighting, scripts to be able to
what you're telling me is you need your foot caught in a bear trap while I punch you in the face to get off. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm wearing a tarantula wig, right? It can get more and more complicated, right? The combo lock can get more and more, sequences to it. And I do think that seems something that I kind of silly in a 20-year-old man, I think is a bit more prevalent in a, 45, 50-year-old man. And you're just sort of like, okay,
Especially when you're finding yourself single in your late 30s, 40s, and 50s, where you're not in the dating pool and you're trying to find something and you have your wants, you have your needs, you have your desires for fulfillment, for sexual fulfillment. And unfortunately, you're not finding a partner.
Right. And I feel like in this, I watch pornography. I'm a fan of it, but I also kind of like do somewhat treat it like processed sugar and refined, enriched white flour, and that's not super good for you in a steady diet. But that, I don't know, I do feel like, I feel like I'm a hall monitor being like shaking, wagging a finger. No. I mean, unless you're into that, and then I'm into it too, right?
Yes, no, unless your kink is kink shaming, you've been so naughty.
All right, well, but so a lot of our conversations do kind of default to a sort of a het normative world. And so we're kind of going to default to sort of cis het normative.
But also there's individuals that are ashamed of their sexual desires that are watching certain types of porn that feed into their needs and wants that they haven't yet explored in real life.
Right. So there's something that's, I feel like, all right, here we go. What am I trying to say? The ways in which porn can spark the fantasy life, right? And, maybe sometimes expose you to different things on the menu that you didn't know really kind of flicked your bick, right? The way it can, be like a street food fair, right? You're like, well, fuck yeah, I want to try that jellyfish, right? That it encourages an exploration of, the flavors of sexual desire and sexuality. Yes. I feel like the ways in which it becomes a stand-in for, I don't know, human connection, all sexual desires, it's sort of like a lazy dopamine hit. And then that can get sort of...
It's an easy dopamine hit until it's not. Because again, even like if you're doing self-pleasure, you're developing your own specific combo lock to get off.
Yes. Okay. So let me kind of dive in a little bit deeper into that. I would say, doesn't everybody, right? Isn't that just the exploration of your own sexual life is about discovering your combo lock, right? But I feel like with that phrase, combo lock, it implies there's just one way to get off.
Right.
Right. And I think that's what we're talking about. Just like a singular combo lock, only one way in which one can achieve climax because you've trained your fantasy, you've trained your brain, you've trained your body to only really climax in a very narrow niche of circumstances where that's, I think, the trap. Right? That's the trap of pornography, is that it kind of gets you into a niche combo lock as opposed to, letting you explore a larger smorgasbord.
Absolutely.
I hate all the weird food references that are happening here. I don't know about you, but it's making me a little uncomfortable.
Yes, because we're looking at a buffet of sexuality right now.
Oh, yeah. And
have you tried the chicken wings?
What do you want me to do with the chicken wings, Blake? I mean, I'm not totally opposed to the chicken wings. I just need a little bit more information about what's happening with them.
Later.
Sorry. Oh, no. You're talking about boneless chicken wings. All right. Never mind. Sorry. Anyway.
Anyhow, as you can see, Bonnie and I have been actually having a lot of fun talking about this topic before we started recording, so we just decided to dive in. But like our biggest question is, for our listeners, how do you indulge in your pornography? How healthy do you feel your pornography habit is? Do you have a pornography habit? Is it something that you do with your partner, or is it something you broach on dates?
Right. Well,
yeah.
I mean, are you asking me all those questions, or can I ask you them first?
You can totally ask me all those questions.
All right, well, let's just go back. How do you feel about your pornography habit, Blake?
My pornography habit, I'll admit, I partake in porn a couple times a week.
Okay. I feel like I'm asking about your drinking habits, but go ahead. Yes, so a couple times a week.
Well, it's like my drinking habits, ladies and gentlemen, I drink almost every day. Thank you very much.
A couple times a week, I would say, do you do a search engine, or do you have a couple of favorites that you kind of keep hitting the greatest hits?
No. I have my favorites. Much like my YouTube channel, my porn habit is curated.
Excellent. All right.
Because again, it goes back to what my combo lock is.
Has your pornography greatest hits or playlist, your favorite playlist, has that evolved over time, or is it really just kind of started out here and you've just sort of narrowed down the niche? Is it kind of the same through the decades, so to speak?
Actually, no, it's just my porn niche has been actually remarkably the same.
Consistent since a teenager. You like what you like, what you like.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, it's much like as Bonnie likes to call me out, like blonde bartenders with tattoos. Guess what?
It's true. All right, so guess what? We all know what Blake's porn looks like. Got it. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So there's a
piercings, tattoos, kinks, fetishes, what have you. I mean, it's there.
Okay. All right. So how do you feel about the relative healthiness of your porn habit?
I don't feel ashamed of my porn habit. I will candidly talk about my porn habit. Okay. Again, like I said, it's a couple of times a week. It's 3:00 in the morning. Wake up. Hey, you know what? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Right.
But it's not a daily occurrence. Sometimes it's not even a weekly occurrence. It's just
it's always available when you want it.
And I'll be candid, I was looking at different ways to advertising. I built an OnlyFans page for funsies.
Oh yeah, you want to broadcast it here? What is Blake's OnlyFans page?
Blake hasn't put any content on his OnlyFans page yet, but I was exploring it because I had a couple friends of mine that are still in the industry reach out to me and ask me, "Hey, look at my content. Tell me what you think."
You mean in the porn industry?
Yes.
Okay. So you have to set up a site and account to be able to look at other sites and accounts?
Yeah. A couple of them said, "Hey, my subscription is free this month. Take a look at it and tell me what you think." And you think my pricing's too high, things of that nature.
market research.
Yes, market research. We figured you'd be the one to ask.
Fair enough. I mean, that is the fun thing about being friends with Blake is that you can come to him with all these, Can you please market research my porn site? Blake, can you tell me what it means when a guy stops coming in bed and you're dating him, right?
Yeah,
you are a go-to for these. I mean, to be fair, this is the good thing about you being a trained therapist is you have actual skills and information.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there's sometimes when I'm actually looking at porn, it's actually for a scholarly interest or a friend's money-making interest.
Fair,
because
right?
like right now, I'm candid. I'm doing a continuing education as a therapist to become a kink-friendly, kink-aware therapist. And the majority of the conversations are BDSM, pornography, fetishes.
Awesome. So, the exact topic we're talking about. Is that?
Yes.
All right. So you feel pretty confident in the relative healthiness, which I think is that's an odd metric to ask people.
And again, well, no, it's because pornography is an addictive substance.
Yeah.
Is an absolutely addictive substance for someone that is not having a sexual need fulfilled instead of in a relationship, or if they're single, what have you, people can overdo it.
Yes. Well, because you were talking about you introduced this topic as a taboo, right? So a taboo has a sort of built-in illicit sexual appeal, right? But it also fits nicely under that hanging sort of Damocles of shame, right? That has
because we're conditioned for it. I made the boomer joke earlier, and it goes back to the day. When I was a kid in the 70s and 80s and the 90s, where was pornography? It was behind the counter, behind a black sheet, and you had to walk up to a counter and ask for it.
Right.
So you were automatically shamed and embarrassed to ask for your type of porn at your local convenience store.
Yeah, there was literally a social gauntlet to overcome.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
It's and also what's ironically enough, back in the town I grew up in, your porn and your condoms were on the same rack.
Why is that ironic? I feel that just seems like convenient,
But it's also shameful. It's like, oh, so you are having sex and buying pornography.
Well, that's the thing, right?
Oh, especially when you grow up in a very puritanical, small religious town.
Called America. Mm-hmm. Okay.
But again, we're talking about pornography now, like Bonnie and I, and I'll ask our listeners, when's the last time you had a pornography conversation out in public? When's the last time it was broached?
I hang around a lot of very sexually explicit burners, so I feel like I've had a lot of conversations about pornography, which is maybe how I have a sense of myself as being kind of like the prude of the crowd.
But again, it's a healthy conversation because we're talking about someone's sexual needs, someone's sexual desire.
I think that's just it, right? That it is very revealing. It's a revealing of sexual desires, I think, at its core.
Yeah, and when you start talking about your kinks, your fetishes, you're displaying a vulnerability because you're telling somebody, I really like this.
And then you're asking the obvious follow-up question, what do you think that says about me, right?
Yeah, and especially if you are doing a dating podcast in your 40s.
Sorry, which feels like exactly how a porn movie starts, honestly.
Wow, chicka, wow, wow. And as we're doing this podcast, we are exploring these conversations. How do you broach this? When you're telling somebody about your kink, your fetish, your desire, it's okay, someone could say, I really like feet and armpits.
Okay.
And exploring that with a potential partner, what do you think about that? Would that be something that you'd be okay with?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Are you asking me? Right? Or
this is a general asking question.
Counselor. I was like, okay. I'm here I have an answer. Okay. So you've had such weird dating habits since your last relationship. Well, okay. Well, let's go to your last relationship. Did pornography come up as a topic? And
yeah, multiple times.
If so, at what stage of the relationship? Your ex was also very, sexually open and sexually adventurous. So as a pretty presenting identity.
Yes. Pornography was just a candid conversation. And it was there was never no shame in the discussion. She had her certain taste. I had my certain taste. We compared and contrast. Hey, did you see this one?
So that happened if my memory serves, fairly early in your relationship. Because I do remember that being something that you really liked about her is that she was just so, as open and honest and candid as you were, right?
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, fuck yeah. Well,
and it's and also non-judgmental.
Non-judgmental, yes.
It's very, very considerate of, likes and dislikes and needs and whatnot.
Okay. Interesting.
Where I've also dated other people where when you're just talking about certain things, people go, oh, you like that.
Really? Well, yeah.
When you're from the Midwest and you've dated in the Midwest and you go, oh, you like that.
Oh my. It's all, those are different tones, but they kind of convey the same sort of silent judgment. Well, not even silent, right?
And also like total judgment where someone's like, okay, I was just very vulnerable and I just said something and all of a sudden, oh no, I've just been had in the said relationship.
Well, now I want to kind of like practice with you what I usually say when I'm presented with that kind of information. I'm like, oh, right on. Is that okay? Is that, I for better or for worse, I am a sexual creature mainly created mostly by Dan Savage, right? And, I know that I feel like we name check him a lot in this podcast, mainly because, him and the ethical slut taught me kind of like the most I know about like how to be good sexual partner as opposed to, the one I was raised to be.
Some of the doctors I'm following on Audible as I bring up the list because one of the books that I've become a fan of, the book is called The Leather Couch by Stephanie Golerich. She's a licensed clinical social worker out of California.
Blake is now playing his phone while we're recording the podcast. That was awesome. I was riveting. I loved it. Okay, so
Sorry.
The Leather Couch, continue.
Leather Couch, and she talks about how to broach sexuality and how to have a constructive conversation with it in the start of a relationship, in the midst of the relationship, and your ever changing feels, wants, and desires throughout the relationship.
Okay, I mean, can you give us some cliff notes? Can you give me some like I can honestly say that I don't think I've ever brought up the subject. I have had the subject brought up to me, and I feel like that's something I need to examine a little bit more closely to see whether or not chicken shitting out on some sort of relationship responsibility. My response has always been, again, Dan Savage, G, good giving and game. I know some of my hard limits, the things I'm not particularly interested in.
Right. Again, each one of us has our hard limits of what we don't want in a sexual relationship. And it comes back to communication with your partner. Right. Sober communications with your partner.
And yeah, let's go back to that, right? Like this. I mean, I can see how this conversation maybe starts a couple of drinks in. A little liquid courage is needed, right? I do think it's important to maybe revisit it. I can see maybe not the first one being the most sober of conversations, but I would say once any kind of actions, agreements should involve somewhat of a sober revisiting.
Yeah, and Dr. Goldridge, what she's big about is, especially when it comes to the exploration of pornography, don't be ashamed of something that you're watching that you're excited about.
Okay, elaborate a little bit on that.
Where, you're having a partner or a potential partner and you're talking about them like these are, when you're talking about sex.
I'm sorry, I still feel like you're vague booking. I maybe need a little, like, for instance, is there a case study?
For instance, it's like you're talking about what excites you.
Okay.
And usually does sex happen in the first date or the second date? Usually, it's all experimental, like the seat of our pants. Let's be honest.
Okay, I'm going to break down what you just said. So in those, whether
where like your first and your second sexual
sex date, right?
Dates.
Okay.
Are usually
sexual encounters.
Sexual encounters are usually by the seat of your pants.
Right.
And then after that, that's where the discussions start. What do you like? What do you dislike? Or is this person teachable? Am I teachable?
Right. Yeah. Okay. No, I agree with that. Why do you think that first sexual experience is sort of non-communicative? Why do you think that is?
I believe American cultural and conditioning, for one, because these are things we don't talk about.
Do you think? I feel like I'm having those conversations more often before the sex happens. That is actually one of the more fun things about dating in your 40s is that there's a little less coyness about it. And there is something quite refreshing about men who kind of like show up and be like, bam, so here's my combo luck, in for it or not in for it. I'm like, all right, well, I mean, I'm willing to try anything, or maybe not anything, but like, it's within my yes, no, maybe, kind of list, but not leaving, but I do remember that. I would say that, yeah, that first sexual encounter didn't involve a lot of conversation. I feel like, but that also meant there was some sort of a gauntlet. It's a test, right?
Yeah. And it's also
is it a chemistry test? Like what are you trying to achieve?
Chemistry, heat of the moment test.
Heat of the moment test. What does that mean?
It's like, what are you into right now without asking?
Right. So what can we pick up from each other non-verbally?
Yeah.
Somewhat vanilla-y, right? It's a little sort of default.
It's default vanilla-y. It's like, okay, missionary. Oh, you're on top now. It's like, oh, it's like.
Yeah, okay. It does feel like a missionary test drive, right?
Yeah, it
vanilla missionary
is.
Test drive, right? Which is,
It's like, if you're into the vanilla missionary test drive, this is not a shot at any of you. Most people find out that's not their bag.
Well, it goes
pretty quickly.
But it also goes back to my previous statement in our first episode, right?
Yeah.
Which, if you're listening, it does not coming mean he's going, right? That was our very first episode. that also kind of like inspired the launch of this podcast is that I do believe that the power of new strange can can override the need for a combo lock, right? And I wonder if that's the test also, right? Can you come in vanilla missionary, right? And then from there we're willing to negotiate. What a weird power play to happen in the first encounter.
Yeah.
Like nonverbal, literally implicit.
Yeah. But like but again, most of our sexual encounters, especially for cis men in America, is learned through pornography.
Okay.
And that's really sad.
Elaborate.
Elaborate, because there's a lack of sex education within schools from their families.
Yes, I would say that is not restricted to cishet men.
And it's like in most of it nowadays in 2023, we're learning it off the internet.
Sure. I mean, I see it really strongly in my nephew's generation, right? The millennials. I mean, I'm kind of the oldest millennial and he's kind of the youngest. There's only 15 years between us, right? And the internet and pornography was readily available in his formative years.
Absolutely.
And I have never, nor do I ever intend to, get into a sexually explicit conversation with my nephew. Is not going to do it. Sorry. Boundaries. But yes, thinking about like the things I do know about how, he dated and, I can see.
I remember, just for example, the first time I was caught with pornography as a kid.
Caught with? What does that mean? Was it like a magazine or something?
Yeah, a magazine under the cliche magazine under the mattress.
I had a friend of mine who found a fleshlight under her son's mattress when he moved out into college.
Oh dear.
A not cleaned one, which is gross, dudes, but yes.
Clean your sex toys, everyone. Mm-hmm. Soap and water is a good thing.
And not really hard to come by.
But we digress. No, it's like I remember when I was first caught with a magazine, and I remember my stepfather was like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, don't tell your mom." And then that's what it was.
Right.
Don't tell your mom. And then all of a sudden, like my mom found out about it later because he actually broached the conversation with her, and the house was burning down now because oh my God, my baby's looking at pornography.
Well, it's creepy when you say it that way.
Yeah.
Yes, take the pornography away from the baby, but
and now mind you, I'm in my early teens by this time.
Right. It's perfectly developmentally natural moment. Yes.
Yeah, perfect. And it was made immediately a taboo bad topic with that one reaction where it's like, oh no, this is something I have to hide. I have to become a better hider at doing this.
Better hider. Yeah. Shame, right?
Yeah.
I think I would say I don't think that's unique. No. I do think there is a somewhat wildly American flavor to that. We like to weave shame into all of our sexual desires. It's like Tabasco. We put it on fucking everything.
But also like you talk about weaving shame into sexual desires. Look at every television show, every movie you've ever watched. Have you ever seen a porn store, a pornography store, a sex toy store, an adult toy store being shown in a positive light?
I mean, I have, but I moved to New York City in the late 90s, which was kind of the halcyon times of excellent sex stores. But what are you going at exactly?
But like when you watch older movies and older television shows, you see them. They're in scuzzy parts of town.
Right.
Yes, they have denizens of society hanging out in front of them.
Okay.
And it's portrayed as something dirty, something disgusting, something
dangerous, right? Dangerous. I feel like the danger is attached to it. Interesting. Yeah, I mean and so again, I don't want to dive down the rabbit hole of shame and sexuality in America. I feel
like we beat that one up to death.
Well, I feel like there's plenty of PhD theses out there that'll say it much better than us. I feel like kind of where we're going back on this, right? We're going pornography in new relationships in the 21st century.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's like when you start talking about sex and you talk about like learning about sex, be candid, be honest about it. Talk to your partner about it.
That's interesting to me because I'm like, in my last relationship, which we've mentioned fairly obliquely and sometimes explicitly on this, I didn't get into those conversations mainly because he was fucking never sober. And that's, I do kind of think that I don't know. For my own personal requirement, I need some goddamn sobriety. Mm-hmm. And that was why one should never date a semi-functional alcoholic, ladies and gentlemen, even during the pandemic. Not worth it. Except kind of got us through the pandemic. I'm weirdly okay with that.
But also, your sexual needs and sexual desires should not be something you should shame yourself or be ashamed of.
That sounds great, counselor. Thanks for saying that.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, this is also something we brought up about like pornography being dangerous, right? Too much of it, right? Being a little dangerous, but also kind of perfectly natural spice of life. All right. So there's two things I kind of wanted to bring up in that you're talking about your experience growing up with your, stepfather being cool.
Yeah.
Your mom being like, the instant purveyor of shame around it. Towards that, I have a couple of friends who have teenage sons right now who have learned, they've said a few times, I've learned to knock before I open any door. And I'm like, well, I feel like that's just good courtesy, period.
Yes.
No, you should definitely knock. It's sad that he had to become a teenager before that kind of basics of personal space came into your relationship, but better late than never. I will say that I liked the way my sister and nephew dealt with his, perfectly normal need. He went to his, my nephew went to his mother and his stepfather and said, I am looking at porn on the internet and I don't really want to download a virus. I don't really want to kind of fuck the entire family Wi-Fi network. So what can we do?
That's awesome.
You know what? I love many things about my nephew, especially how he was raised, but that my sister did work very hard to keep kind of healthy, open communications going. And his stepfather was like, well, dude, son, as long as you're living in my house, I'm not paying for your fucking porn, which I also think is a very excellent boundary put down as well. So what my sister did, and it's kind of interesting because this is before you and I kind of started becoming friends again, is my sister reached out to my best friend who, he is gay, trans, sex positive worker that, basically he's who I go to with any kind of sexual question besides you. And so my sister reached out to my best friend being like, what is appropriate ways in which to allow my teenage son access to porn that is also not going to send him down a dark web road to a federal indictment, but also doesn't require us all to have, astronomical credit card bills for that. And my best friend was like, first of all, really happy to be asked. Also really excited that this seemed like a really healthy kind of conversation to be having.
No, I'm excited to hear this because this is a tremendously healthy conversation.
Oh yeah,
between parents and their children.
And the solution was Pornhub.
Yeah.
Right. The solution was a vetted site that had plenty of free, maybe not super long, but plenty of free, pornographic images available.
And also Pornhub, ironically, saying this out loud for some people, Pornhub is a very actually well-respected business entity where they try to keep their system as clean as possible.
Yes. And I was like, but that was an awesome solution. And I asked my friend, like, what would have been the solution before, the advent of Pornhub or this? And he was like, there's also plenty of places to get free porn or donated porn. And he sent me to all these sort of like websites that have free donated porn, and I was like, fuck yeah, right? That, looking for a sex positive solution for teenage boys. But I was like, I wanted to share that. I was like, I actually think that was a real
That's a really great sex positive story.
A real healthy, story of way to handle this other than my baby is touching porn. Well, take the porn away from a baby, but not my baby. Stop it.
Yes. In the early teens, and it was funny because my stepfather was looking through it. He's like,
right. Oh man, I'm gonna step away from that. I don't even want to dive into whatever just happened in that conversation. But yeah. But I feel like there's something that there is a acknowledgement that your sexual desires are normal and shared, right? And his right?
Yeah.
Response to your
yeah, and it wasn't. And it's like, I'm like, I'll give it to him. He did not scream, did not yell, did not belittle me, nothing like that.
He didn't tease you at all?
He thought it was funny.
Oh.
I mean, but he goes, it's like, wow. It's like, and where'd you acquire this? I said, I will not divulge my sources.
Good.
Yeah.
You're not a rat.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a rat.
I will not divulge my sources. And it's like, well, it's one of your 7 friends. Well,
I mean, if we're going to play Clue about it, but is it really that
do
important?
this, it's like, yes, it's Colonel Mustard in the library with the Penthouse magazine.
Again, does it matter? Right. All right. So the other thing I was going to bring up is part of our conversation earlier is that, kind of still operating within the cishet stereotypes that we've been talking about, right?
Right.
Is that I do feel that I don't consume as much pornography as some of my cishet male relationships. What I do consume is an awful lot of erotica, right? Erotic fiction. I used to write it, right? It's actually the first piece that I ever got paid for writing and published. And so I used to write a lot of it. I love it. It's a fun thing. I'm a big reader, and I know a lot of friends of mine, mainly gay males and cishet women, who read a lot of erotica fiction. And I'm weirdly, once again, here's my judgy McJudgy opinion, is that I kind of think that's better than excessive use of pornography. And when I said that to you earlier, you're like, yeah, I agree. And I'm like, oh, you agree that reading erotic fiction is better for mental and sexual health than excessive pornography.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
Why?
Because one, it's stimulating other parts of your brain. Again, you are using your imagination. You are using the left side of your brain to bring out all the fun things and imagery from the written word.
Okay, I agree. Something else you said is that you're not constantly going back to a favorite actor, actress, right? You're kind of not locked in on
you're not locked in on a specific scene, a
specific body type or specific hair color, right?
You're looking at, and you're also looking at different scenes through your imagination that is being described to you from the author.
So I would say the difference between that is that the imagination also leaves things open, right? So a partner can be cast in that role, right? I mean,
and creative of your own imagery. You'd be sitting there reading your favorite erotica, and all of a sudden it's I could picture insert said partner here.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's hot. Which could lead to something completely different. You could broach that with your partner, going, "Hey, I read this. Would you mind reading this and seeing would this be something you'd like to role play?"
Yeah. Right. Or, read this and tell me if it gets you that hot. If not, I'm if so. Right. Well, that's what I say. My experience is with reading erotic fiction is that it actually kind of sort of increases my libido, increases my desire to have sex in real life. Right.
Absolutely.
It literally gets the juices going. Right. Whereas what I've seen about excessive porn use is that it doesn't. Right. I mean, the friend of mine who lost his wife and then his child, she left him and took the kid, and he doesn't get to see his kid anymore. It was because he stopped all actual sexual relations with his wife because it was only this, right? It was only this porn. It was only with that death grip on his dick, right? It was just literally to the elimination of all else. It had
become a tremendous detriment. And also that's where we're talking about a serious addiction came into play.
Yes. Well, it seemed to, I don't know, decrease his sexual desire, even though that so-called sexual desire was apparently the only thing that was firing in his brain. I don't know.
Well, this is where he designed his combo lock to be specifically aroused for whatever type of porn he was consuming.
And I think it was it was a type of porn. I don't think it was the same porn, but I do think it was definitely in one genre and just cycling through the greatest hits,
Yeah, I mean, South Park did a whole episode on this, making fun of people's addiction to pornography.
It breaks you, right? Yeah.
It does. And it breaks you, and all of a sudden this is where seek help.
Yes. So there are therapists that this is a presenting problem. People do seek help.
Yeah, they do seek help. I've had previous clients in substance use programming where pornography was one of the primary addictions.
Really? Mm-hmm. Was there? Okay, tell me more. I'm not quite sure. I don't know if I have questions.
Well, no. I've had clients that would sit there and get stoned to bejesus and then watch copious amounts of porn while consuming their insert said substance here.
Got it.
Where there was a comorbid addiction to pornography while using drugs.
That just seems real lonely and painful after a while.
And a lot of it comes from, candidly, post-traumatic stress, depression, anxiety, and the combination of the three and the inability to form intimate bonds with other human beings while you're addicted, while you're watching pornography.
All right.
So this is the time of the episode where we get into the uncomfortable questions.
Yes. And you have been, frankly, a little intimidatingly bouncy and candid about this topic. So much so that it's wow, a little, you just, intimidatingly smiling about it. I'm trying to think of what is an uncomfortable question, and then I just hit on the obvious one. Oh, wait, go ahead.
Well, no, it's like while I was in school, my psychopathology teacher was really candid, openly queer man that talked about sexuality very candidly. And he placed a lot of emphasis on, you're going to have a lot of conversations about sex out of the blue, and that you need to be really comfortable with yourself and the topics, because you could lose your poker face if someone all of a sudden is talking about their depression and anxiety, and then all of a sudden they're talking about insert said topic here that might blow your mind.
Okay.
And we had 2 weeks of class. All we talked about was sex.
Okay.
Sex, pornography, kink, like the whole gambit. And there were people in class that were fire engine red, and he would ask like questions like, okay, who here has had interesting sexual encounters or has been around certain things? And one of my classmates goes, I'm a professional dominatrix. And I said, I used to bounce in a BDS denim club. So, I mean,
You're like, got experience.
and then all of a sudden the record skipped because everybody just turned and looked at us.
You're like, yes, we have identified ourselves as experts. Go forward. Well, I feel like that kind of begs the obvious question, and maybe this is something you've already gone through a classroom full of budding therapists, but have you ever watched pornography that you feel was over the line, crossed the line, not okay?
No. Nope.
Have you ever seen a snuff film? Have you ever seen kiddie porn?
Okay. Watching for my own.
Your own pornographic pleasure?
The answer is no.
Okay.
Now, I have been, there's a clinic in Manhattan, which I will not mention its name because it's confidential, that I was interning there and I saw child pornography. I saw snuff films, let them be real or so-called, where, yes, made my skin crawl.
Okay.
Because this clinic in Midtown Manhattan treats extreme sex offenders.
Okay.
And like I spent 2 weeks there and it was very intense and it was challenging.
Do they treat extreme sex offenders by showing that level of pornography and then providing behavioral modification therapy? Is that what it is?
We were showing what the client was, because most of them they were court mandated to be there.
Right.
Because they were caught with said pornography. And we were, because of evidence that was in the cases, we saw it.
So you saw what they got caught with?
Yes.
And again, does the treatment plan involve behavior modification?
It's heavy behavioral modification.
Okay.
A lot of reality therapy where we're calling you in your own shit. You do realize you're watching children porn, child sex videotapes.
Right.
You do realize that, right?
We're watching children being raped. You realize
Yes.
that, right? That's what's happening, right?
Yes. I mean, it's almost like a scared straight moment type of therapy.
I mean, in some ways, it's actually a bit more direct about that. Right?
Yeah.
Behavioral modification therapy does involve, basically bringing up the desire and then trying to program a negative response to it, right?
Yes.
From ammonia up to electroshock, right? It is a little Clockwork Orange. It is literally Clockwork Orange. It's not a little.
It's not a little. It's pretty damn close.
And it's the idea is to keep them out of prison, right?
Yeah. Because unfortunately in America, most sex offenders do not, especially child sex offenders, don't make it to prison. They usually are paroled or house arrested now, which is not something you hear about in the news a lot, because most child molesters don't live in, have long lifespans in prison.
Yes.
This question has taken a very dark turn.
Well, I mean, that's what that's kind of where I was going for it, because you seem so bouncy and happy about this. I was like, well, let me just Lake up over it.
Well, my first counseling in my career, I was working with criminal justice clients. And like one of my jobs was help them get back into the employment scene. I would have to do heavy research. This individual was arrested for copious amounts of child pornography. Can't be near a school, can't be near a church, can't be near this, can't be near that. What type of employer is going to accept this individual?
Yeah. I mean, yes. What type of employer is going to accept this individual?
Yeah. And I mean, and now like later in my career, would I choose to work with those clients? No.
Why not?
Candid honesty. Like at the time, being a young counselor in training, it was very traumatic. It was incredibly traumatic, especially when you come across a client that felt what they were watching was fine.
Because they wanted it.
Because they wanted it. This was their desire. This was their combo lock. This is what they wanted. And they felt that there was nothing to be ashamed about.
Yeah. It's that. So, I mean, I feel like that we've hit upon the whole kind of conundrum around pornography, right?
Right.
Is that exact moment is that, there's plenty of people who think golden showers is the line, right? Is the idea like, that's that's where the shame should start, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like we've gotten to is children.
No. Is there a dark web of pornography out there that is incredibly extreme, incredibly dangerous, and sexploitation?
Yes.
Yes, there is.
And that's the fucking line, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's a line. It actually kind of revolves around consent, which we will eventually come down. Children cannot consent. Animals cannot consent, right? If there's an obvious violation of consent, like say a snuff film, again, not consent.
Heavily impaired individuals that are intoxicated to the point that they can't stand or communicate. That's not consent.
I mean, honestly, I feel like impaired is if they're stumbling, right? Stumbling and cannot consent, right?
But again, now, when we're starting to get into these topics, yes, this is where I
This is where we become less bouncy Blake and more,
this is where we become less bouncy Blake and more
firm boundary Blake.
Yes.
Fair, good, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. Was that a uncomfortable enough question for you?
Yes. Let me relive a very, very challenging, terrifying 2 weeks of my life.
You're welcome. It's part of my charm.
Thanks.
All right. What's your uncomfortable question for me?
I don't think I could top yours. So, has there ever been a time you've been embarrassed by the type of porn you've watched?
God, yes. Honestly, I'm still currently embarrassed by the type of porn I watch, which is probably why I'm so uncomfortable about this fucking topic for this goddamn podcast. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if this is a universal experience. I feel like it is after having this conversation with you. That porn has been a great avenue to explore some of my desires in a way that, it was in some ways a process of me getting comfortable with them and just somewhat, it was, kind of the porn search function being, sometimes the only way in which I was able to admit some of the things that I was liking, right? And it would take some of them I'm okay with, right? I was just raised so weirdly, and I just have such a strange, specific trauma background. I am utterly grateful to my best friend that gave excellent advice to my sister about my nephew's porn habits. That same best friend basically took me as the token straight girl into an awful lot of sex positive, LGBT, queer sex spaces in New York City. And kind of through exposure therapy made me get over some of my shit, which I appreciate. I'm utterly grateful for a lot of those experiences because it does, empirical evidence is, the best thing to rid you of shame.
Mm-hmm.
But I would still say I, would not want to share all of my search options on Pornhub or some of the other things. That's just not things I'm willing to admit to the world at large. Sorry, guys. I like that it is a conversation starter. And I also kind of like that what I've learned about myself from my porn habits, which maybe is the best option, is that maybe the specifics might change, but there is a theme to what it is I like about sex.
Mm-hmm.
And that has been something that has been revolutionary in communicating to my sexual partners, about the various different, I have a destination, right? The various different routes to get there kind of involve variations on this, right? And that is good communication. And I don't think I've always had that kind of communication with my sexual partners. And so porn has been very useful for me in that realm, in being able to first break the information to myself, and then figure out how to communicate it to others. So I'm not an pornography person, right? But I also have also dated some people who have been, dipping into the dark side of it. And I'm like, well, moderation in all things, right? Including moderation. Did that answer your question?
It does.
I'm bright red enough for it, right? Look at me.
Ladies and gentlemen, she is cherry red right now. I have done my job.
Fuck you, Blake. Fuck you.
And this is the second episode she's told me to fuck off.
All right, I feel like it's going to be... Still think he's the nice one, guys? Anyway. Not that I'm sensitive about that at all.
No, but when it comes to your pornography habit, don't hide it. Don't be ashamed of it. Talk about it.
Agreed, right? That... unless it kind of falls into, the dark web federal indictment area, then...
seek help.
Seek help. That's the end of it. What a hell of an episode, Blake.
I know. All right, everybody.
I'm Bonnie Neal.
I am Blake Thompson. It's definitely time for a refill on this one.
Damn straight. Bye, guys.
Bye.